The last section in the exhibition is called Diverse Paths, and it really focuses on work being done in East Tennessee during the last couple of decades. And Diverse Paths really indicates the fact that recently art in this region has gone in many different directions. There are lots of different styles. The art world has really become so globalized. You've got lots of influence coming in and out of East Tennessee. The university's art department has helped with that by bringing in great artists from outside and also producing student artists who go out into the world and bring back ideas. So that's part of why you've got such diversity in this last section. Two of the pieces I want to call your attention to next are by artists who were actually some of the earliest graduates of the University of Tennessee's studio program in the arts. And one is Whitney Leland, who is known for his oil paintings, his acrylic paintings, his watercolors that are reduced to this abstract language of tendrils of bright color. And they tend to be symmetrical. In some cases, the rhythms are very fast-paced and the forms are very intricate. In other cases, like this painting from 1977, they're broader and looser, almost like you're in an undersea environment. Again, very much watery, bold strokes. The more you look at this, the more you realize it's not a bunch of paint on a flat surface. You feel as if you're entering into an atmosphere of color and light. It almost seems as if the light is coming from behind. And so you find yourself lost in his compositions. Julie Warren Kahn is another early graduate of the university's art program, and she's well known for her marble sculpture. She's very inspired by Henry Moore and will approach a block of marble with an intuitive response to the grain, to the patterns in the marble itself, and often we use those as a guide for her work. And she often carves out large open areas so that you get a feeling of being able to move through the sculpture as well as move around it. In many cases, her work becomes somewhat narrative. She'll often name them after patterns that emerge, forms that emerge in the sculpture. This one's called Warlord, and you can get sort of a shield-like effect from looking at one side of this. And so often she'll name the work after something from mythology or history. Bessie Harvey is another very important artist from East Tennessee. She's from Alcoa, and the museum here did a retrospective of her work back in 1997. Harvey was a self-taught artist who discovered a love of art fairly late in life and began to recognize in old pieces of wood and roots the presence of strange figures and spirits. And she would take these pieces of wood home, would study them, add paint, cloth, shells, whatever she needed to bring out the spirits that she perceived were inside the wood. And she felt as if those spirits had been placed there by God. She was a devout Christian, and in many cases the sculptures that emerged were biblical figures such as Moses. In other cases they were African ancestors of hers that she perceived were there. In some cases she created sculptures that were more narrative, that dealt with, say, the history of African Americans in this country. And we have in the exhibition two sculptures by Bessie Harvey that reflect the different types of ideas or stories that she would focus on. One is called Washwoman. It's from 1981. It's actually it's inspired by her daughter, who was pregnant at the time, and she was looking at her daughter's life and seeing how much her daughter was struggling, and she found this amazing piece of wood and found a way to position it so that this natural swelling in the wood really makes you think of a pregnant young woman who's doing the wash and is slumped over with the burden of her load. Here we have a later sculpture from 1988, Moses and the Serpent. It uses actual human hair from a friend of hers that she used as the beard. Moses holds his snake aloft. It's from that story in the Bible where he is confronting Pharaoh, and she's used clothing, all kinds of objects right around her to put together this powerful, very expressive figure who seems to be almost stretched vertically as he towers above us, looking down with that divine sense of inspiration. And this is, again, very typical of her interest in biblical themes. Moses was one of her favorite biblical characters, and at one point in her life, she talked about trying to create a series of sculptures that would tell Moses' entire life. Richard Jolly is an artist who has a studio in West Knoxville, and he's been very active for the last several decades producing large-scale glass sculpture. He's seen as one of the most important figurative glass sculptors in the country, and we have a couple of examples of his work. What Jolly does is he's very focused on the human figure, and he's found ways to cater his technique to produce very large, very expressive figures, and often take figurative elements and combine them in very complex sculptural forms. He's also developed a unique palette of colors so that when you see his work, his colors appear to be unlike those of any other glass sculptor that you encounter. He's worked in bronze, he's produced large-scale drawings, he's produced installations, so he's focused on blown glass for the most part, but is also branching out into many other areas. Here we have a couple of his blown glass sculptures. This is a work from 1989. It's called Bust of a Woman, and it shows Jolly's ability to use blown glass and find very expressive forms. He's gone back over this main body of clear glass and has laid down in very delicate lines this cobalt blue glass to give linear form to define this female figure. And it really underscores Jolly's interest in drawing, which appears again and again in his work.